Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this video, I'm going to be doing a factory speaker replace and head unit install on my 2010 Ford Fusion named Jadzia. Without further ado, let's get started. So I've done a few videos before on where I've had to take the door off to do stuff. But we'll go back over it again. There's going to be small Torx there that has to come out. There's a small Torx here that has to come out. There is a small Torx at the bottom, kind of towards the end of the door, that has to come out. You get those three out, and then I believe what you do is you lift up and then pull out on the door card. There may be one more Torx under here, I don't quite remember. But you're also going to need to pop these trim rings out, so you can use a trim tool, sometimes called a cat's claw, and just pop these out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, get the door off, and then we're going to take a look at the speaker situation, because this is going to be a little bit unique. The previous owner put in a custom sound system, as you can see from the wiring. They ran an amp. They put in two custom speakers in the front, and they did install a custom head unit. So if you're coming from factory, this is not 100% going to be the video for you, but I can at least show in this video how do you actually get to the head unit so that you can remove it, how you do get the door cards off so you can work on those speakers. But today we'll be ripping out this custom setup, which is only two speakers up front, no speakers in the back, and then trying to put in new factory spec speakers, well, nicer than factory but the same style, and get them connected to the factory wiring and go from there. Alright, so I used a T20 to get this loose up here. This was a 7mm bolt, and then this down here was, if I can find it, there we are, another T20. So then you don't need a trim tool, these will come right out. You got to disconnect the electrical so that you can slide things around. So push on the tab, pull it out, 1, 2, 3, 1, get those out of the way, and then we can work on getting the door out of the way. I did forget, I think this has to come out. I'll get back with you on that one. Okay, I did forget, there's another T15 on the back side up here. That's got to come out. And when you go to actually remove it, you just pull it straight out and the tabs will pop out. Looks like no, we do not need to remove this to get the door card off, but we will need to remove this as a tweeter was installed, and that's going to have to be disconnected. But anyway, finish getting this off, and then we'll take a look at that wiring. Okay, so this popped right off, just pulled it and it popped out. So you can see, this is that cover where the tweeter is, and this vehicle did not come with a tweeter. So this is 100% aftermarket install. It's speakers held in with this little nut, so I'll have to take that off and then push this enclosure thing that the speaker's sitting in out. Though I don't know if I'll leave it in or not. It's going to look kind of cheesy because there's going to be a hole in it. But it's hooked into the aftermarket wiring. And then here is our speaker. This had a conversion plate because the speaker is round and the default speaker hole is kind of rectangular oval. And again, what looks like happened to me is the previous owner, they put this in, right? Their aftermarket wiring. But then what they also did is they cut the factory wiring right here. So what I'm going to have to do is undo the zip tie, cut through this tape, identify the wires, pull them out a little bit So then I can strip and then crimp onto the new speaker, but I can't do that until I actually have a working head unit, because, and I'm probably going to get my words mixed up here because I don't know it as well as others, but essentially if you wire a speaker backwards, it creates a lot of interference with itself and it messes with the sound quality a lot. So if you don't know what the pinout is, meaning which wire is what, you kind of have to hook it up, listen to it, and see what sounds better. Hopefully we'll know what the pinout is when we pull the head unit and we look at the harness behind it, and we can say, hey, yeah, this is positive wire on driver speaker, and this is negative wire on driver speaker, and we can correlate that here. We'll know what's up, and we can just hook it up and get on with our day. But I don't have that information right now. But what we can go ahead and do is, since the speaker cavity is empty, we can go ahead and install our new speaker. I did forget to mention that I think this was factory, but these were also T15 Torx. These 4 screws, which I believe were the original screws holding the original factory speaker. Alrighty, today's speakers are Kenwoods. They are KFC C6866S, and if you dig into these and you pull up their specs, you're going to see they're not awe-inspiring, and that's okay. I'm hooking this up to a non-amplified head unit, meaning I'm not going to run a custom amp or anything. So as any speaker of a higher quality is just kind of going to get wasted, because you'll be not utilizing the full potential of the speaker because you won't have the power to push it. So I went with these. Excellent deal on them on Amazon, and they are 6x8s, full 6x8s, which means they should just drop right in to that slot. So I'll go ahead and get these out and screw one in. Alright, so here's our new speaker from the back. It does come with its own pigtail, which most speaker sets will. Some of the ones that are super cheap will not. Looking at you, Skosh. Go ahead and plug that in. You're going to want to align that with this groove here. That's for your wiring. And you'll see that when we go to put this in here, that it's going to drop right in perfectly, because this enclosure was meant for 6x8s. So you can take those T15 Torx I mentioned a moment ago, the original factory 4 there, and just use them. So like I said, we're going to run the wire out, but we're not going to connect it to anything right now because we need to make sure we get the wiring correct. And we'll just go ahead and screw the speaker in, and then we will move on to the next door. Alright, so now we're at the driver's rear door. Same kind of deal. We're going to have a T15 here. There's a little false floor here. You pop that out of the way, you can get access to the bolt. There is our T15 back here. And there is, looks like there is not a T15 along the bottom here like there is up front from what I'm seeing. So we'll get that one, we'll get that one, we'll get this one, and then it should, just like the driver's door, you should just be able to pop it out once you get this trim piece out and this trim piece out. Alright, same basic idea when you take the door off here. Just be careful. Some of these pins are going to resist you a lot more than the others, and they may break. I broke one. Actually, I broke 2. And some of them may come out of the door and stay stuck in the metal skin here. You can work them out with a cat's claw, but be gentle when you do it because they may try to break on you. I mean, at this point, you're dealing with a 13-year-old car, so, you know. Alright, so the previous owner also cut the wires here, but they left some length. so this one won't be as difficult to get fixed up because we'll have plenty of length. We just gotta pull this electrical tape back a bit and then clean it up, get ready and butt connect it. And we've got our original T15s in here, so same deal as the front door at this time, because I don't know which wire is what. We're just going to install the new speaker, which is also, this is a 6x8 just like the front, so I can just grab the other one and put it in. And we'll just put it in. We'll run the wires through the little wire groove there, and then we'll move on to the next door. And I won't film the passenger side because we've done driver front and driver rear. It's going to be exactly the same over there. Alright, so now we're to the more interesting part of things, which is where we got to pull this off to get this head unit out. And there's a few other pieces that have to come out first in order to get access to this. If you've seen my videos about replacing the floor shifter, or I think mainly just replacing the floor shifter, or replacing the HVAC panel, it covers all this. But I'm still going to do it again because I've probably forgotten. It's been a while since I've done that. But basically, this coin tray has to come out. That gives you access to this. But in order to make enough room to get stuff off at the top, you have to open this. Mine's a little sticky, but you have to open this, and there's a couple of screws in here, and then you can pull this up a little bit, and then you've got access from the bottom, and then you can kind of pull the whole thing forward. And you may have to, in order to get the clearance you need, use the manual override, which I'm trying to remember where that is on the floor shifter, and pull it back to neutral or drive. You know, you may just be able to turn the car on, pull it back to neutral drive, and then leave it there. And that'll give you the clearance you need to pull this whole thing out. And once you have it out, you can get to the stuff on the back side and get this head unit out and disconnect the wire harness. So with all that said, we'll go ahead and get started on that. Use a cat's claw to get this out. You can, if you look closely, you can see where I've chewed on it a little bit. Yeah, hang on. Let's try to get this gear shift moved first. Alright. Now, at this point, it's going to get really mad at you if you have a door open, so let me close doors. Alternatively, if you don't want it to squawk at you, you can disconnect the battery. Either or. Okay, now we have room to kind of get into this and lift it up. I may have to switch to a screwdriver here, because I was using a different trim tool. Okay. Am I remembering my order incorrectly? Do I need to lift this up first? It's kind of how it's looking when I look at this plastic. You got to lift the plastic plate around the floor shifter a bit. Then you can lift this plate, and that gives you the access you need. So let me dink with this a little bit, and I'll get back with you. Alright, dinking over. I was correct. You have to lift the edge of this first. There is a lip, as you can see, and then you can get this out of the way. And then that will give you access down here so you can pull this. So I'm going to get these coins back here. I'm going to go ahead and just disconnect the electrical here just to make it a little easier. Get that out of the way. Alright, that is out of the way. Then at this point you can kind of, yeah, that's what I remember. Then, as you can see, Well, you can't see because I need to move the camera. But you're trying to do that. You're trying to pull out the bottom. You can't pull it all the way out because this is in the way, which is why you got to pop this, your little cubby up here open. There we go. You pop that open, there's a false floor. Oh, I really need to replace this tripod. But there's a false floor here. You can lift it up. Come on. There we go. All right. And as you can see, there are, I think those are 7s. 2 7mm under there. You get those out of the way, and then you can lift this up, and then that'll finish letting you get this out. Now, all that said, this is aftermarket, pretty obviously. The original factory center console may have some extra fasteners to it. I don't know. When I got this vehicle, this was already in. So, bear that in mind. Okay, I remember now why you needed to take, those are 8, sorry folks, those are 8mm, by the way. And I remember why now you had to do that. It's because then you pop this up, and there are 2 more 8mm here that have to come out. And once those are out, the whole assembly will come out. Alright, so for reasons unknown to me, these 2 guys here, they're 7mm, not 8s. Anyway, let me move the shifter back again. Alright. So, now with this loose and that loose, this all can come out. And with the shifter back, we'll actually have room to do something. So, and minor correction, I did not realize it until I did some more sleuthing, but at least this particular trim package did include tweeters, which I'm just going to continue to ignore. I may eventually, the previous owner, what he did is he bored this hole, slide in the tweeters he wanted, and so I may get to the junkyard and get this piece just to pop a new one in and it look okay. In fact, that's probably what I'll do. But I would need to buy component speakers to utilize this correctly, and I already made my purchase, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, so here we are. To get this head unit out, I imagine there's 4 of these, 2 on each side. We're gonna take these loose. I have no clue what size that is. Spitballing it, I'm gonna say maybe a 7 or 8mm. I hope it's millimeter. Alright, it's not a 7, but it also looks like it's fairly loose. Let's see. It's an 8. Alright. I'm gonna get these out. And then do the same thing on the other side. And we will also disconnect all the wiring back here. This one already has probably a Metra adapter harness. So once we get this out of the way, I may even disconnect everything so I can kind of set this aside. Because we're going to need to look at this harness and kind of figure out what we need to do after we open up the new head unit and see what we see, because you can see there's some custom wire connections that are back here. So let me get the other side and slide this thing out. Okay, so I disconnected all the component back here. I took the antenna out, I took the main harness out, and there was also a microphone for Bluetooth. That's all disconnected. So now we got this giant wire mess here. This is the electrical for your blower control on the HVAC panel. Took that off, and once you do that, the whole thing can kind of rotate off to the side. We're not overstraining this harness too much. In fact, I can just kind of do that. That's better. So now we don't have a strain on this harness, but it's out of the way. So now we can work and we can kind of take a look and see what we need to do with this adapter harness and the original harness and see how we're going to put all this together. Alright, so the new head unit going in is made by ATOTO. I'm imagining they're Chinese. It is a model S8 G2B 74PM. Assuming that's the RAM, 32 gig of RAM. Or that might be storage, that might be RAM. Or that might be cell phone. I don't know. Shouldn't be cell phone. But anyway, the shorthand on this is it is an ATOTO S8 Premium. It does lots of fancy things. It's an Android head unit. It can do wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay. It does Bluetooth. It does Wi-Fi. It is backup camera compatible. It actually has a specific backup camera, which I also purchased, that we will be installing today. So it has all these fancy schmancy things. So let's go ahead and open up the box and see what's inside. Alright, so we get a connecting cord of some kind. This looks like GPS antenna. This is going to be harness. See, that's going to go in the back of your unit.
Let me look at the pinout on that.
And then this is, it's even labeled, that's pretty handy. They don't always do that. So this is going to be...
Yeah, this is totally different. So you're going to have to clip.
This is going to be front camera. And that's going to be hitting my camera. And this is your Wi-Fi antenna. It's kind of interesting. This is your microphone. Bracketry. Bezel. Interesting. They include screen protectors, which is kind of neat. Got that here. We have instructions, and then there is the unit itself. See if I can get this out. Okay. So here it is, still in its protective packing. I got the 7-inch, so it did not have the oversized screen. I didn't want complications from that. This should just slot right in easily into a doubled-in slot. So in this particular situation, we're undoing some of the not factory, but the aftermarket stuff that the previous owner did. And he ran wires kind of in the crease. So the TLDR is we got to fold down the seat in order to get things out. And if you've never done that before, it's a little bit different in a Fusion. The release to fold down your seat is not up here in the back. It is actually in the trunk. So there are 2 releases, one on each side. So they're located kind of there, over here. Just something to be aware of as you're running wiring. And in our case, there is a backup camera we need to run, so that will be relevant for that. Okay, we're back. So after a lot of untangling and removing and cleaning, you'll see I've got all of the aftermarket wiring out of the car. Turned out to be quite a bit, and I've disconnected everything. So now, wiring wise, we are back to a stock configuration. Here is our stock factory connectors for everything, which is lovely. Now, if you're doing this and this is your very first aftermarket head unit you're installing, you need to make sure, or you should have made sure before you started this process, that you have a converter harness. Because if you don't have a converter harness, then what you have to do is take the harness that the manufacturer of the head unit gives you, which is this, and then you have to try to directly connect to your various factory connectors and chop them off and then splice the wires in directly. And that's a major no-no normally, because it means that if you ever have to replace this for any reason, you're in for hell. If you ever want to try to restore the factory radio, you're in for hell, because you got to put these connectors back on. So normally, you'll go to a website like Crutchfield or something like that, and they will sell you a adapter harness, something like this. This is the one from the old head unit, but it is still usable. So this is where things start getting very tedious and boring. You see all these wire ends here. Some of them were used and some were not. As you can see, like this guy here never got used. He still has a protective wire cap on him. I'm going to have to go through and color match, because the colors, fortunately for stereo systems, the wiring is fairly universal, and I am labeled here, but I'm going to have to go through and match everything for all the wires that you see here. And you've got a couple of choices when you connect these. So the previous owner had used these pretty fancy, basically wire nuts is what they were, but they were a easily reversible wire nut, and they worked pretty well. I intend this to be the last head unit. Sorry, my nose is clogged. I intend this to be the last head unit for this vehicle. So I'm going to use a more permanent connection. I'm going to butt connect, which is where you'll see it here in a little bit, but you put two wires in a metal barrel and then use a crimping tool and you crimp it. And then I have the marine style that has a waterproof jacket that you shrink around it. And that's what I'm going to use to attach these two. So if you're going to do something like that that's more permanent, then you need to really think and make sure you've got all the wiring you need before you commit. Stuff like this can be had, like I said, online. Metra makes a ton of these, and they make life a lot easier. So like I said, now is the boring part, where I'm going to start matching wires and all that, and figure out where I am and see if indeed this is going to do what I need it to do. Because it may not. I may have to stop and be very sad and try to go scrounge up a harness, or I'll have to order one in, but I believe this should work for what I need to do. This blue module here is to preserve steering wheel controls. It sort of works. Apparently it is programmable, is what the previous owner told me, and if I track it down I can figure out how to program it, but we shall see. Yeah, no, I'm repeating myself here, but we got to match wires, and then the other thing we have to do is mount the GPS antenna, which is right here, and mount the Wi-Fi antenna. And normally what I have done in the past on vehicles when I mount these is they come with a sticky strip, and I will stick them along the A-pillar, kind of on the inside, so they're out of the way. They're not really in your face, and they're not really visible from the outside unless you're looking for them. And that generally works out pretty well, providing you're given enough cable. We're also going to need to run a microphone on the old setup, which did have a microphone. It was right here, and I'll probably put that back in there. If you're real slick, you can try to stick it up in here, or if your vehicle came with factory microphone, generally they'll stick it like right there, right in front of the driver, and you can do that. But anyway, I've gabbed long enough, probably because I'm not wanting to mess with this, but this is the not fun part, so I need to get to it, make sure I can do what I need to do. Alright, so at this point I'd be a little remiss if I didn't mention the backup camera. This unit is capable of supporting a front and rear camera. I did not purchase a front camera, but I did buy the specific backup camera that goes with this unit. Interestingly enough, it uses a component at this end, and then you've got a huge run of cable, and then you've got some specific wires that need to line up with this harness here. For example, the pink is specifically for the backup camera. And I think red is your power, and then we got a ground. So that's going to be kind of interesting because I think I only have one ground on this adapter harness. So this will be like a 2-to-1, which I can do with butt connectors, so that shouldn't be too bad. So there's that. We will need to get that wired in with everything else so we can run the wires clean and make it look good. This is going to mount onto the license plate or above it. That's what this is all about. And this one is supposed to have both your traditional straight backup and also kind of a 360 bird's eye thing in the back. To make that work right, you see that right there? Thing that looks like a checkerboard? I believe that is an alignment pattern that you hang up somewhere so that you can dial in and calibrate your camera to make it work, which is pretty cool. So that's going to be interesting to set up. I did go ahead and check all the wires, and there are going to be some that are not used, but I believe everything I need is on this adapter harness, so I'm good to go there. So now I'm going to get my crimper and my butt connector kit, and we're going to start putting this all together. Alright, so I'm going to show how to join 1 or 2 wires with my crimper tools and everything. But after that, I'm just going to start crimping off camera so that this won't take me all day. But I'll go ahead and show tools here. This is they call it an automatic wire stripper. Get your wire in, squeeze it, and it'll give you a nice neat strip. You don't have to have this, but it makes life so much better. This is the actual crimper. So you can see it is color coded. There's a red, a blue, and a yellow. And that corresponds with your different barrel sizes based on American wire gauge, or AWG. So you can see we have red, blue, yellow, and white for really tiny stuff. Most of the time you're going to use red when you're doing automotive wiring, at least when it's not like big power wires and things like that. So red is 22 to 16. You can thread multiple wires into one side of a barrel if you need to. So we're going to need one of those. I'll just kind of put that there. Go ahead, we'll pick a wire. And also remember earlier I was saying, we couldn't connect speakers because we didn't know which wire was what. Well, now, thankfully, because this is all labeled, we know what wire is what, which wire is the positive, which wire is the negative. So I can use this to help inform me on which wires I need to crimp to on the speakers, so we have those correct. And once we have those correct, we can go ahead and put the doors back on, which would be nice, because right now it's really annoying to open and close the door, so I don't have anything to grab onto. Alright, let me get this staged. Okay, it is this clump of wires that is all of our speaker stuff. The other clump of wires is steering wheel control stuff. So when I look here, and I look at our green here, flip it over to the English side. Camera, come on. This is our rear left positive, and we can see, golly, this camera. someone wants to help contribute to a camera fund so I can get something better, please do. Do this. There we go. So it's a solid green wire. So we look for a solid green wire on our adapter harness. And that's going to be, looks like here. And I just looked a little closer at the adapter harness, and I don't know if this will show up on camera, but stinking, there it is. You see that shine right there? It's actually labeled on the adapter harness, which is what. So anyway, green to green here, this is the positive on our rear left speaker. So that's good. So what I'll go ahead and do is we got to straighten up the ends, because these were essentially wire nutted. Again, I apologize. I don't know how well this is going to wind up showing up on camera. This camera does a terrible job with depth stuff. Don't ever buy a Samsung A52G 5G. It's just a very, very ho-hum device. So we're going to clean that up, and we're probably going to need to trim that a little bit to make sure we fit into our metal barrel correctly. And then on this side, isolate our wire, pull our little protective cap off. Same deal. You're going to want to twist this up. I see they went with aluminum wires instead of copper, which that'll work. I mean, I guess copper's getting that expensive these days. That's what happens when people are busily trying to blow each other up. Copper's pretty important for that. So we'll twist that up to make it neat and pretty. And again, we'll trim this. And the reason why I mentioned that is if we look here, I mean, super fuzzy. Come on, camera. There. See, that's way too long. It needs to be about half that length. And so that it's kind of sitting in the middle of our crimping drum. So I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to thread these in the crimping drum, and then we'll crimp. So a crimp is a mechanical join, and in theory you can reverse it, though it's kind of a pain. So you want to make sure that you've got the correct color wires. And then we're going to take our crimper, come in. Our color code says we need to be right here. We're going to try to lock in the middle, close as we can. And then we're going to squeeze really hard. And then let go. There you have it. Now again, do not do this unless you're very comfortable with the fact that it's going to be an enormous pain in the butt to take this apart, or that you're just going to have to cut it out and then redo it at some point down the line. And like I said, this is to be the last head unit for this car. I don't intend to upgrade anymore. Now you see, I totally missed it. I did not get this wire in all the way, so it just slipped right back out. So I'm going to have to kind of wiggle this side out and then recrimp. So I'm going to work on that. Bring you back. But this is why it's always important to do a tug either end of your crimp and make sure your wires are secure. Alright guys, sorry about the camera. The tripod mount's worn out. I need to replace it. But anyway, now that we've got the color coding, we can see that we've got a white and a white with brown stripe. And I can look at color coding I have from on my new adapter harness here. So we know that front left with no stripe is just white, front left positive, and front left with brown stripe is negative. So now we know which side is what, so that we can connect our speaker appropriately. And one thing I didn't realize, let me disconnect this over here. One thing I didn't realize is on the wire pigtail they gave me here, they did actually do a wire and then with stripes. So I suspect that gray and then gray and black is probably front right. If I dig into this, and then the one I used on the other side, no, I did that one gray. Okay, probably in the back corner. It's gonna be the white and white with stripes. So basically what I'm getting at is they had envisioned, Kenwood had envisioned those were going to be used in front, not all the way around. But the too long didn't read is match stripe with stripe and solid with solid, and you should have the polarities correct and life will be grand. Alright, I have updates. As you can see, I've pretty much got everything that's applicable to this vehicle connected. There's some extra goodies like power antenna or something called steering wheel key that's not applicable to this 2010. There's extra goodies. The only thing I haven't connected yet is the ground, and I'm going to have to go back and reconnect accessory. And the reason why is the backup camera I bought. You see there's two wires coming out here. The pink one goes into a pink wire on the ATOTO harness for rear camera. So I got to connect that. It's pink with stripe. No, just pink. And then you see this red here, and that's accessory. So what's going to happen here is we're going to have two accessory wires going into one on the factory harness adapter. And I didn't catch that, so I got to go back and fix it. And then it'll be later, but on the camera side of things, this is the camera. And this has to be tied into your reverse light. And this is a chassis ground, so you have to connect this into the vehicle body somewhere. Somehow, some way. It is just a wire end. I may wind up putting a terminal on it, so I can just, sink it into something. We'll see. Wanted to give updates. Once I get chassis ground done and the other one's done, what we'll do is we'll go ahead, plug this in to our unit, plug the factory adapter back into the factory, and then we're going to power this up. Well, I got to finish the other speakers too, but I'll do the other speakers, get this all powered up, and we're going to see if we have sound, if everything's working, did I wire everything right, and then we'll work on actually buttoning everything up. Okay guys, we're at the front passenger door. You'll see Ford was naughty, did not follow standard color codes. To keep it short, the orange stripe is the negative. The purple stripe is the positive. If you are in my situation here, you can actually trace where the adapter harness plugs into the actual factory harness, look at the actual pins and see the wire coming out to figure out what's what. So orange is negative, purple is positive. And then on this harness, what that means is your stripe is the negative, and then your solid is the positive. So you're going to take stripe to orange stripe, and then solid to purple stripe. And then this one will be wired correctly. Okay, so here we are on left rear, driver's rear. Same kind of deal, non-standard colors here. So white with green stripe is your positive, and this fella here is your negative. Now, if you do happen to have a Chilton manual or a Haynes manual, there are diagrams in it that lay all this out for you, so you don't have to guess. But I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, so that if you do not have this manual, or if the wind makes you look at other things, that you can still get it right. So, onward. Alright, so we're in the right rear, and brown with white will be your positive. Brown with blue is going to be your negative. Okay, so everything is wired up, everything is plugged in, and we're going to do function test and see if we actually see stuff and see if we can actually do stuff. And hey, look, it powered up. How cool is that? So we're going to walk through a functions test to make sure that indeed we got music working and things like that, and we'll go from there. But this is a good start. It lit up. It's doing things. And then after we do that, that's when we can start to button everything up. That's when I'll heat shrink all these connections, start putting some tape on stuff, so on and there forth. Alright, I'm pleased to say that it appears that all the basic functions are working as they ought. Played some Bluetooth music, played some music off the radio. Steering wheel controls are not working. I got to decide if I'm going to try to program this thing, or if I can look on the factory harness and see where some particular colored wires are coming out, because it appears to have a steering wheel button learn feature, but it needs either it has an internal CAN bus or it can somehow do it, but it has two wires labeled steering wheel key, positive and negative. And if I can find those and get into them on this harness, I will. Otherwise, I have to use this guy, which might be kind of interesting. I mean, if this doesn't work, there are going to be CAN bus things available, probably for this unit. It might be newer than that. I'll have to get into it to figure it out. But all in all, pretty pleased with how this is behaving. The speaker wiring is working as it should, so all of that is correct, which means that I can go around, I can start heat shrinking these tubes so they'll be weather tight, and I can go ahead and put the cards back on the door, start taping things up, and figure out what to do with routing, and start the process of running the wires for the antennae, and the camera and the microphone. Alright, let's talk about this little blue box real quick. So when the previous owner put in their head unit, they wanted to maintain steering wheel controls. They installed this to do so, but it has to be programmed. And it turns out what he needed is there is a cable that is supposed to connect into this, turns into a 3.5 jack, and then you can plug it into your unit to maintain your steering wheel controls. Old unit didn't have that. Well, this one does. The ATOTO does. That is this fella here, but I don't have this. So if anyone out there has that and would be willing to part with it, let me know. That would be great. Otherwise, I got to track this down to get my steering wheel controls to work. Because what's specifically happening is this is a CAN bus interface, which lets it interact with the CAN bus that's in the car to maintain things like steering wheel controls. But it also does audio signal monitoring. So if you want to remove this box from the loop, all that work you see there, all those crimps, all that has to be ripped out. And I would have to buy a different harness, different converter harness, which I'm not doing. I've got today for this project, that's it. I can come back and revisit this with that cable and fix this at a later date. Did an experiment earlier where these are the actual CAN bus wires that are going back to the CAN bus. The ACM is what it's called, the audio control module. Tried tying in the steering wheel control wires that come with the ATOTO wire kit. It's like a brown wire and an orange wire. That didn't work. So, gotta have this. If you buy like a Metro converter harness, it may not need this. It comes down to your application. Do you want to maintain your steering wheel controls or not, or whatever? But if you wish to pursue this unit, they are still available. They are still for sale. This is called a Radio Pro version 4. The actual model number is a RP4-FD11, and this will maintain steering wheel controls. There are other solutions out there. This just happens to be the one that I have. With all that out of the way, I have ran the Wi-Fi antenna. I've got it going through there, and then I hid it under the glove box, had it come up. When the door is closed, you won't even see it, and it's mounted there. And then I ran the GPS in the other direction. Again, I hid it under this steering wheel panel plastic, comes up here, and is mounted up here. Uses some double-sided tape. So those are done. So the very last thing that I need to run before I can start buttoning everything up is we need to run the rear camera, the backup camera. That's this giant mass of wires right here. And the general way that I think we're going to do that, providing we have enough cable, which I believe we do, is it's just going to come out. It's going to get tucked under a seam on one side. It's going to run down. Very similar to how the previous owner had run his aftermarket stuff. And then we'll get it in, and it's going to have to come in and kind of sneak under the trunk pan and pop out. Try to keep it real clean looking. And then I'm going to have to tap a ground and a reverse light in the back. But let's go ahead and do that. I'm running out of daylight. Been at this all day, and I would love to do something else. So for the camera, I've left cord up here, right, for where it plugs in, which is somewhere. It's floating around here somewhere. But I ran it the same way I ran the GPS antenna. Difference is, I have to do something to tighten that up. I had it ducked down behind this trim piece, and I tucked it completely under the trim piece. There's a little bit sticking up right there. Did the same thing through here. Used the trim tool to lift the trim up enough that I could do that. Tucked it around through there. Runs up through there, comes up through there. It is hitching a ride along the vehicle harness connections for the things up in the trunk lid, because that's where the brake lights are. And so we're letting that chill out right there as we figure out how we're going to make this come down and be clean on top of that. So that's where we are. I'll bring you back once we figure out how to do that. Alright guys, this is what we're going to do. So it's kind of fortuitous. I need to replace this anyway because mine is crapping out from water damage. But this is two pieces, but this whole thing can come out right here. And you remove it by going after, I think it's a bunch of 11 millimeters, but you can get that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. You get all those out, and then this whole thing will kind of pop out. And what we're going to do is once that's popped out, we are going to drill a hole probably somewhere here, there, somewhere in there, and we're going to feed the camera down, and that's how we'll do it so that this stays really, really clean and factory. So there you go. And yes, this is my license plate. It's public information in Florida. You now know you can wave hi when you see me on the interstate. Alright, updates. So what we decided to do is there are holes underneath where this Ford emblem goes. So utilizing that, we are running a wire through there. And then as you can see, we've got the camera mounted using the license plate mount. And we'll just put this back in. I'm also replacing my third brake light because it's bad along the way. And put all that back together, and then we can, well, we got a little wiring to do, but then we can try out the backup camera, make sure it works okay. Alright, so if you do it like I did and you take the emblem piece off as well, when you go to put this back together, brake light goes in first. You've got some guidance holes, but also notice you have these two push tabs. Squeeze them in a little bit so they pop in. You've got these guidance pins that will drop in, and then it will independently sit in tight of this other piece, and then the other piece can pop on top of it. So that's how that's set up. So when we go to put this in, see, it's kind of fighting me a little bit, just like that. And it'll finish snugging up when you tighten the nuts that are on the other side, on the inside of the trunk. But there, that's how that's going to look. And we can actually go ahead and test at this point. I just need to connect the electrical. Alright guys, updates. So we took care of the wiring coming down so that this will stay behind the false ceiling, I guess. And then comes down here, and we've got it. This is supposed to go into the hot side of your reverse light. Turns out that is green with black stripe. Here on we're using the left brake light. So I tied all that in with a butt connector, and now there is a ground. If you can take a look back there, there's a ground back there, and I'm going to tie the ground for the camera there. Got enough cable to get over there. What I am doing, because I don't have anything else on hand, is I'm just going to loop this around under the bolt and then tighten it up. This is not the greatest way to do this, but this is the way we are doing it today. So the more correct way would be get a lug of some kind, terminate it, and then thread it in there, and then Bob's your uncle. But I don't have something that fine. I'm trying to get this job done today.
No doubt, bro. These bugs are killing me.
Yeah. Alright, so this is the result of getting everything wired up. As you can see, the backup camera is working. It is right side up. Not sure why that's upside down. Gonna check settings, see what we got to do there. But with that, finally, everything but the microphone has been run. And then we can button all this up. Okay guys, we are back together. Don't forget, you've got two 7mm here. You got to lift up this trim piece to insert this piece, and then put this piece back on top of it. Don't forget to reconnect the blower, which I did. Got that connected. Make sure you put your two 8mm back up here. Reinstall your mat. Close that. Don't forget to put your door cards back in. You can look earlier in the video to see how to take those apart. Don't forget any of the electrical that you unplugged. And with that, finally, as of 8 o'clock, 8:15 local, it's in. I still need to put screen protector on it after I clean it up, and I still need to program it and all those other fun things, but it is back in for now. And I've got brand new speakers all the way around. And if you hung on till the end of the video, good on you. This one was a bit of a bear. As I mentioned, I gotta find that wire so that these controls will work, because right now they are not going to work. They're just going to be there, and controls are going to need to be worked on from here. But it's in. I'll make a follow-up video in a couple of weeks, I guess, with my experiences and how I feel about it, and if it ultimately was worth the $400 I paid. I consider this a good upgrade.